it's quite emotional work, I think, to have candidates sitting opposite you, to be working with people, training, developing, speaking, hearing people, working with them to find employment. It can be a very rewarding work, but also very emotional work, and we kind of recognize that what you do is really important. So as we start, if you could just introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and just remind us what organization you're with. And if you could just briefly, I know as NPO people, we like to talk about what we do a lot, but if you could very briefly tell us what it is that your organization does.
Okay, I'm Tanya Melnichuk. I'm with the organization which is being registered is called the Autistic Community Network. We're not registered yet, we're just very new from that perspective. But my friends and I have been functioning as the Autistic Strategies Network for some years, which is likely to continue, where we teach people about strategies that work well for autistic people. So that would be across the board in terms of whether it's school, whether it is what sensory strategies work well, what life strategies, and we also teach each other that and connect each other. But the new NGO which we're starting is just because there is a gap in services for autistic people. We can't cover the whole country, but we can at least deal with our own area. There is no national representative body for autistic people in South Africa. All the autism organizations are led by parents or therapists and so on. And some of those have huge conflicts of interest with actual autistic people, sometimes also flogging therapies, which we think are harmful and so on. So that's where we are.
Thanks.
I'm Marissa Tillis. I'm the Career Development Practitioner at Cape Town Society for the Blind. Cape Town Society for the Blind, or CTSB, is an organization that empowers blind and visually impaired people through training and skills development. We have a social worker and an orientation and mobility instructor there that provides training. And we also have a workshop, which is a small business unit workshop, where we have entrepreneurs, basically cane weavers, basket cane weavers, who work for themselves and makes the products for us as well.
Hey, Emma McKinney, got a little company called Disability Included. Lots of work with employers trying to integrate and retain people with disabilities. Lots of disability bridges, so helping people with disabilities how to bridge into employment as well. And then do lots of disability research and research and development for people like UNICEF, countries like Madagascar, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and then also Malaysia, DWC as well.
Hi, so you already know who I am. I'm Alexia. I'm the Dean of Teaching and Learning for Educor, which is an educational supplier. We're not an NPO. And we offer education, distance education, contact education, online education in TVET, higher education, and across a number of different brands. So you might be familiar with Damlin, City Varsity, Central Technical Colleges, ICESAs, and I could go on, but I know that we're pressed for time. So we have a number of different educational institutions nationally.
Great.
Right, I'm Jenny Erlinson. Up until last year, I was in the large corporate environment. So I'm new to non-profits. But I left at Corp in June last year to join the National Institute for the Deaf. I spent many years in recruitment and training, and now I'm the sales manager and client relationship manager for the Institute. So basically, we offer training to unemployed deaf youth or youth with various degrees of hearing loss nationally, and we have clients in Botswana as well. And in the last year, we've actually broadened out to encompass other people with disabilities as well. So I liaise with clients, and the operations or head office is in Bristol.
And I'm Larry Williams. I'm from the Quad Para Association at Western Cape. So we're an organisation of and for quadriplegics and paraplegics, and one of the programs that we're working on at the moment is the Work Readiness Program, which takes a small group of 6 candidates and looks to find them permanent employment opportunities through simulating the workplace.
Great, thanks everyone. So I want to start with talking about what I started with in the candidate panel this morning around education and and career awareness of candidates. And I think, it's wonderful to see graduates with disabilities. It's wonderful to see graduates like we saw this morning on the panel, but that's not the case for everyone. And yeah, I'm just wondering if you guys could give us an insight, those of you who are working directly with candidates for employment, what you guys see in terms of skills gaps coming through, maybe from special education, and also in terms of how candidates are prepared in terms of career awareness. I mean, do they have access to that? What are you seeing in terms of education? What are the challenges that you face as someone working in this placement space around the education of candidates? I don't know if anyone wants to be brave and pick us off.
Well, I'll mention, because I worked on a big project, not with the Institute, but in my previous life, when I worked for a company that recruited people with disabilities and then placed them with organizations that trained them in, for this particular client was a wholesale and retail.
Hello,
we had to screen over 500 candidates to get 6 people for this learnership at wholesale and retail with operations level 4, due to the fact they had to have matric. And then we did assessments on the individuals as well, and we found that a huge problem there, or challenge, is numeracy and obviously communication skills. And for this particular learnership, it was in a shoe store, where a very exclusive shoe store, where the shoes probably cost more than what the stipend was. And that's a huge thing as well that comes as a challenge. Clients are not always prepared to top up the stipend, and when they get funding from a particular SETA, $2,500 just doesn't cut it. So you find supply doesn't necessarily exceed demand. There are a lot of people out there with disabilities, but not at, say, a matric level, grade 12 level, and obviously you need to do a lot of screening. Again, because they don't do or have readily available counselling, I found that with those people that I interviewed, they do learnerships as a profession. They go from one to the other, and then never suitable employment at the end of it. So it does become a huge challenge.
And I just would like to touch on that. We have a lot of candidates that come into our organisation that comes from schools. A lot of them are basically dropouts. They don't even reach matric, and if they do reach matric, their education level is really low. The numeracy, their languages are below average, and most of the opportunities out there is looking for your matrics with a 50%, if not higher, in numeracy and languages. Just the other day, I had a candidate saying, "Oh, there's a call center learnership. I would really like to do it. I've done a call center course. I think I'll be great with it." But the requirements is matric with numeracy 60% and languages 60%, and she's below average. And I'm like, there's no ways I can apply for you because you do not reach the requirements. So there is a huge gap with regards to candidates coming from school, that the education level is below average. And with regards to career guidance, I don't see that much as well. I have candidates who come in and they're like, "Oh, I want to be a social worker." That's and I can see in who they are as an individual while training them that they would not actually be suitable as a social worker or have the actual education level to be a social worker. So there's no guidance within the school place as well with regards to careers.
Yeah.
Can I jump in on the career development as well? So we've seen a lot of candidates who a job is a job and there's actually no support around thinking longer term. A lot of the times the stipend is enough to cover, if anything, transport. And so to try and talk to candidates about, okay, how can we start these conversations around skills development, further skills development, thinking longer term, thinking of a career. A lot of individuals just don't have that focus because they're thinking day to day, because they are in vulnerable communities and they're really struggling as well. And a really sad add a really sad factor about the matric as well is so working in spinal cord injury often where individuals have acquired their disability. I've worked with a lady who was 15 when she was shot, and she wasn't able to go back to the school because it wasn't accessible for her wheelchair, so she never actually graduated matric. But she's completely technically savvy. She is very personable. She has excellent communication skills, but the barrier to her for actually obtaining employment was matric. So I would encourage employers to think about, why is matric your minimum qualification? Why are we not looking at the skills that people have, and if those skills fit the requirement for the role as well?
And for me also, we need to focus a lot on. I do disability bridges with people with disabilities themselves, in terms of, because I have a right to access. The employee needs to give me this and this and this and this, but actually it's about how to conduct yourself in an appropriate professional manner. If you want to get things, there's a way of getting there, and but also for employees to know what is appropriate and what is reasonable accommodation and what isn't. One of my guys at a particular retail, he was supposed to be a packer, and first Saturday of payday is really busy in that environment. He's deaf, and he says no. He didn't rock up on the Saturday, so the rest of the team had to pull together and really work hard. Sunday morning he comes to work horribly pissed. Sorry. So his manager said, "So where were you yesterday?" He said, "Well, you told me that if I'm not allowed, if I drink alcohol and I'm dirty and smelly, I can't come to work because customer image and all of that, we've got a brand to withhold. So basically, you told me I can't come to work if I'm drunk and smelling and this and that. So I followed your instructions, so I stayed home." Okay. So, because actually there was a Pirates and Chiefs game going, and so basically I'm following what you told me to do, and so therefore I took your advice and I stayed at home. So the manager's response was, "Yes, Shan, you're disabled. Yes, that is what I said. It's okay." And the friction that it caused from the other disabled employees who said, "Listen, I had to work really hard." And the division that caused between the disabled staff, between the staff, the hearing staff and the deaf staff, between the management, it was just, it's just, they are, and I'm not saying all people with disabilities take a chance. Please, not at all. Majority are hardworking. But you need to just have a policy and standards that is applicable to everybody. So what's the reasonable accommodation? That was not an example. Like about saying, if a hearing staff member did that, what would the procedure be? And that needs to be applicable to people with disabilities with accommodations where needed.
Definitely. Does anyone else want to jump in on the topic before we move on?
I'd like to just talk about how school doesn't prepare anybody for anything these days anyway, in the disability space as well as elsewhere. Now, I straddle two things because I have a day job and we teach project management, but a lot of our teaching is in the same stuff that I'm passing on to parents of autistic children, which is unlearn what you learned about education. Read the texts which are used by the people who do unschooling, for example, because this is about real learning. The jobs of the future are so volatile now, we don't even know what they're going to be called. 10 years ago, there wasn't a thing called an Uber driver, for example. I mean, there's a data scientist. These things are new things. So what we need now is we need flexibility, we need critical thinking, we need systems thinking. There's this list of 7 which I gave in my breakaway session. And those are some skills which some non-speaking autistic people even could have if the school recognized the nature of their disability properly. Now, generally, special needs schools that accommodate autistic children will often put them together with children who have trisomy 21, who also frequently have intellectual disabilities, because they don't understand that although the autistic children have other barriers, they generally are not intellectually disabled, but the teachers think that they are. They don't understand that they have a problem with purposeful movement. So the people end up, they're very few. I know of 2 special needs schools in South Africa, which I would say I would send my autistic kid to. The other ones are going through the motions. They're doing some crafts with people who are actually not really good at crafts in the first place. And then they reach matric, and then the parents call me and my community and say, what do I do now with my kid? But the school has not been geared even towards the old way that things were, let alone towards the way in which the world has changed for the fourth industrial revolution. So I've got a standard list of text, which is not prescriptive, but which I hand out to both guys who are studying with our company, which are not necessarily disabled, as well as to disabled people. And there's some things which I chuck into the one mix and not into the other mix, which is go read Seth Godin's Stop Stealing Dreams. Go and read 1,000 Rivers by Carol Black. Or go watch the following video by Sagata Mitra, or listen to this. It has subtitles because it's on TED. So those are things which I put out there so that people would change their idea of what education should be. Job roles are no longer defined as clearly as they used to be. They're a lot more fluid, and you have to be able to multi-skill rather than necessarily multitask. Yeah. So those are the things that for parents who care, I put it out there, and it's going to take the wealthy people first clicking and actually doing this for their children, their own children, before they realize there's a whole lot of other people who are not wealthy who need the same opportunities. Yeah. But so, to some extent, I work with those who are going to get it and are going to have the means before I can actually even extend it to other guys who have parents who don't have the background to be able to homeschool, for example.
So we really are, I think that's, what's come out for me here is that sometimes there are really great skills, but the qualifications aren't there, and that's a real challenge for those of us working with candidates. If we turn to, and I guess this question is for those who are working directly with employers around job placement, what are some challenges that you face in terms of working with business accessing employers? How do you go about doing that? How do you, as the person with the candidates, go about finding employers to partner with? Is that something that's challenging for you? And have you found ways of doing that are helpful? I don't know if anyone wants to.
I think I'm maybe able to answer in a very strange way, because my organization doesn't work with that, but we believe in diversity. And I've got a feeling that if you can convince organizations which are not disability organizations to believe in diversity, they will do that themselves, because that is what we do. So if we're in a workplace, we did some work in Namibia, for example, and I identified a guy who would be excellent at doing a certain type of project role. And we spoke to the employer and said, we think that he should move into the project office. They then called us in and told him that he was about to have his third disciplinary for throwing cell phones against the wall and smashing them. We pointed out that the guy probably has a sensory disability. In other words, everything is overstimulating for him, because everything about him points towards that. But if you take him and you give him a private office, and then they're like, oh, but hang on, we're a bank, and if you're a level so-and-so employee, do you get this? And we're like, no, you want good work, and you want a good worker. He's your best worker. Now, he's on his third disciplinary because he just doesn't have the environment for this guy. We can see this. He doesn't even know it himself. So because we value diversity, there's certain types of autistic people, even in my own company, we don't actually want, because those wouldn't work for what we do. But there are other disabilities. We're very open to getting bipolar people. We know that they might be fluctuating in terms of their productivity, and that the roles that they might be something where they're doing certain ad hoc work for us, rather, especially if people really, really are having a hard struggle and they need some kind of work. But that's where we come from. So when we work with our clients who are learning project management, we pitch that to them and saying, you should have more diversity, because your project team is not coming up with good ideas. You need some ADHD guys in here, or you need some guys who are whatever, or you need some deaf guys, because they're going to be able to see this thing a lot better from a different angle.
Yeah. So again, it's that diversity question, that diversity issue.
Can I add to that?
Yes,
maybe another layer coming from an educational perspective. So when we look at placing our students for work experience, we face a lot of challenges, because the first challenge that we face is that we need to educate the companies that we want to place our students with disabilities. Now, for most of them, we can't accommodate the student. We don't necessarily have the resources. We don't have the space. We don't have the services and the resources and the support that the person might need on site. But the second challenge that we face as an educational institution is that we are not necessarily we're specialists in education. We're specialists in programs and qualifications, We're not specialists in disabilities. So we struggle as educational institutions, you know, and I've worked for many educational institutions, is to educate the workplaces that we want to place our students in. And there is so much, just by reaching out to Michelle and to Dermot and asking questions, there are so many resources out there that are available to our students. But where do we start as an educational institution to support those students so that we can have that conversation as an education institution between the workplace and an organization?
Yeah. Any other, anyone else want to jump in on this, issues around accessing employers?
Can I maybe not so much an issue, but we've had some really positive times where employers have actually looked for us. I think there's a big need now, and a lot of employers are becoming aware of BEE, but some really positive interactions that we've had with employers have been where they've contacted us, they've said, we want to be able to come to meet your candidates to see if they'll be correct organisational fit. And then through that, the employers have actually gone through sensitisation training with not just the colleagues who are going to be working with the individuals, but the management as well. So it's this really holistic approach, and it's led to really successful placements. So I know that that's not so much an issue, but it's been really positive because we've had a lot of organisations like that contact us, and it means that we're forming really meaningful relationships where the employers are going to have the right attitude. And I think those are the sort of types of employers that we want to be looking to partner with in the future as well. So I think forums like this are excellent to be able to connect employers and service providers.
And I want to add to onto that, like Laurie, we also have organisations approaching us, if not the organisations, then obviously the recruiting agencies as well. The only challenge that I have sometimes is that once the candidate is placed, we do the normal follow-ups, but then as soon as something happens within the organisation that we are not aware about, I hear through the grapevine. And then there's a problem, and then they don't actually approach us, even though we have told them in numerous occasions, I'm here, you can call me, I'll be there in a heartbeat just to find out and rectify, or just to assist with whatever problem there is. And it just so happened that one very large corporate lost a candidate because they didn't contact me. And even after I emailed them and say, hey, I heard through the grapevine that you're having this problem. Can you tell me more about it? I want to hear from both sides what's going on. No feedback from that. And that's the challenge that I'm also facing, is that we don't get the feedback once the candidate is placed. And then how do we continue that relationship with the organizations if they see, oh, it's not working, I'm not going back. It's just closing the doors there.
There is that challenge of maintaining those sort of relationships. We have to start wrapping up, but I want to end by just flying along the line and asking two things. If there's one piece of information that would be really helpful for you to have from business, what would that be that would help you to better place candidates or to better structure your programs or your focus areas? That's the first one. And second, is there what do you think is important for employers to understand about working with particularly non-profit sort of organizations who work with these candidates or suppliers? Those are my two questions. Can we start with Laurie on the end?
No problem. Okay, so first one, the piece of information for employers to know. Is that the right question?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. I would want to know, what is your skills deficit within your organisation, so that we can start to form a career journey, a career pathway for our candidates, so we can start to give them, like we were talking about, some career guidance and make sure that they're being skilled in an area where there is going to be jobs, where they are going to find qualifications. I think for us, there's working in physical disability, there's a lot of people just assume that they're going to go into admin roles or into call centre. But there's actually a huge range of opportunities out there. IT is a huge industry, but people aren't getting trained because there's no awareness that people need to be moving into that space. And then, sorry, Michelle, what was the second question?
Quite complicated. What do you think is important for employers to understand about working with organisations like yours?
I think that each individual is different, and I think that that to work in partnership, so to have the organisation involved for some things, but then for the relationship to really be between the candidate and the organisation. But like you said, to be able to be there, to be able to mediate any issues, and just to be able to provide, solutions. And we as NPOs are there to ask us the silly questions. Ask us. If you're having any kind of difficulties, we are there as a resource. And I think a lot of employers, like you said, they use us initially, but then sort of forget that we're there. So just to kind of, again, offer and say, hi, if you need any support, we are here. Yeah. And we all love what we do. So we're always going to drop everything to be able to make sure that we get the best outcomes for our candidates. So thanks. Yeah.
Okay, I'll start with the second first. I also think employers should realise, although we're a non-profit organisation, we do need to make money. And the recruitment and the training, because then they want everything for nothing. And I find it's actually quite sad that they don't respect the fact, because some of them are only prepared to do this if they should get funding, or we get funding from the National Skills Fund, and then we can top up their funding from the CETA, etc. They need to be able to do it as part of their strategy and do it. That answers a bit of the second question. It must be a strategic decision to go this route and address this critical and key skills, as you said, and make it, it's not a quick plug and play. And it's not a quick fix just to put some numbers on the scorecard, because they can't get management, the ownership and the management control. So, we'll start with skills and get the black, unemployed, disabled learnerships. So it really is important. And I think they need to put their money where their mouth is and really make sure the stipends are substantial and that actually it becomes a holistic thing within the company. And then eventually it's not about disabled and people that don't have a disability, it's about people. And they're there to do a job of work, and everybody's an output they're measured on.
Okay, so I'm going to sort of mesh your questions into sort of one answer and tweak it slightly. So I'm not even going to try and remember what the questions were. I've got to answer from a different angle. But so for me, education is fundamentally important. With a disability or without a disability, it is the centerpiece that glues everything together between an NPO, between an organization, and between the individual. I think mine is more a request rather than what I would ask of the employer is that I really think that as NPOs, as an educational institution, and as an organization, we need to sit around the table together and have that conversation on the solution that we can offer an individual that is tailor-made, that is individualized, but that is scalable as well, so that we can service an entire community. But how often do we sit around the table and have that conversation? This forum has done it, has brought people together. But I really, for me, it is, let's have the conversation, because bringing us all together, we can offer these individuals such an opportunity by working together, by improving our work readiness programs, by providing qualifications, by providing accredited skills programs, and so forth. So for me, let's have that conversation together and not separately. No we or us, but we as a team together.
Great, thank you.
For me, just develop a thick skin. In terms of the disability sector, I know is so fragmented and so political, and all the disability organisations so many have lost their fundings. They're all scrambling to try to keep their heads above the water. But and I'm not saying shop around, but just find the right fit for you. For this particular individual, for this particular incident, for this particular issue that you're dealing with, just as I said, develop a thick skin. If you can't find what you're looking for, shop around, network with each other. Exactly what you were saying. Network, find out what's working. Where did you get help? Where did you get support? And the next thing that I want to say is also just start small. Just start small. Don't go too big too quickly, and just know that you're all going to make mistakes, and that's okay to make mistakes. It's about how do we take those learnings to make sure that we don't keep duplicating those mistakes to go forward. So start small.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, basically, I'm agreeing to everything that they are saying at the moment. But I actually want to know if there is an openness in organizations to possibly doing just, even if it's a 1 month or 2 month internship with especially individuals who had just graduated. I find that we've got a lot of individuals who are graduating, but in order to get the actual diploma, they need to do an internship, and then there's a huge struggle where they are trying to find interns in some internship. Besides that, even though they do get their diploma, they still struggle to find employment because everyone's looking for an experienced candidate. And I'm like, well, how do they get experience if they do not get employed? And it's just pretty much frustrating. So I'm hoping that there's an openness to, like, even if it's a few months internships, it will look good on their CV. It will gain the experience. The candidate will gain the experience. And as Larry said, yeah, guys, just keep in contact with us. If there's an issue, let us know. I do believe that it's between the organization and the candidate that's been placed. But yes, there's going to be times where you guys are going to be clashing and you just don't know how to handle things. We are here to assist in any way we can.
Okay. I also have to tweak the question in order to be able to answer it, because we haven't been working as an institution in this area. However, this has happened informally to some extent. And one of the questions that I would want to know from the employers is, what are their expectations of an autistic candidate? Which links into the other thing, what do they actually think autism is? Because they may have had either expectations which came in from so-and-so's cousin is whatever and he's a computer boffin, or it might have been that they've done some reading or in the news about how certain firms like Microsoft and so on is working to empower autistic candidates, and they tended to be better product testers than all of the other guys and so on, because the disability comes also with a set of abilities. However, if their perceptions are, as I told in my earlier story, that it's a uniform thing like that, you just need yourself an autistic and then you're fine. You could be employing the wrong autistic, and you may not actually know what you're in for in terms of the kinds of accommodations that need to be offered, especially since it's not the matter of providing a wheelchair accessible table, but there's different styles of thinking and there's different styles of communication, and there's going to be anxieties and there are going to be some things which you weren't prepared for because you just thought you needed to give somebody repetitive work, and that's how it works. So it is a matter of finding out, what do they currently know, what do they expect, and then thirdly, for us as a new organization within our plans, we need to train a lot of our volunteers, as well as when we start employing people, to be able to provide that kind of training and sensitization to organizations, because many autistic people don't know autism beyond their own autism. So they will go and they will very easily go and play, the classic Stella Young thing, I'm not your inspiration, thank you very much. One or two of them will go and give the inspirational talk about how they used to be like this and now they're like that. And it's not a useful conversation, and it only pertains to them, and they don't think about other people's types of multiple disabilities and the other people's form of autism. So.
Great. Thank you so much to our panel. Let's give them a round of applause.